So one morning you wake up after a late evening doing some work, and you come and you have a look at the work that you did last night, and it's a spreadsheet that you set up, and you find you're just checking everything. Everything looks right, and you realize, oh yes, I need to now take this and add it to a document that I'm working on. So you go and you say, all right, let's browse to the document, go to documents, and there is no documents. The documents folder is completely empty. There's absolutely nothing in there. So like, how could that be? You should have, hundreds of 50 folders and filled with files and everything, and your document that you want to work on, and it's gone. And in fact, the last save that you did of this spreadsheet in documents isn't even here. Your documents has been cleared. What could have happened? All right, malware. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is malware, viruses, etc. On Windows and Linux. All right. It is not true that Linux is not susceptible to being infected. It is more difficult to infect a virus, to infect a Linux box, and there are many different distributions of Linux, which each are more difficult to infect than others. But it's a fallacy to think that I'm running Linux and therefore I'm absolutely immune to any kind of malware. I mean, me being a programmer, I could very quickly write something that could have caused exactly this problem that you're looking at right now. I could have cleared somebody's documents folder. In this case on a Linux machine, what you're looking at, but I could do it as easy on Windows. It's the same thing. Now, that particular example of malware would probably be a Trojan. So I might have sent you a file via email as a trusted friend, and given the file a name of something that I know you would be interested in running, and you run this program. It might show you a pretty picture or whatever, but in the background it actually downloads this Trojan onto your computer, and it runs, it executes, and it deletes all your documents. It might go so far as to delete your videos. It could delete absolutely everything that it's got access to. All right, and that is a Trojan that completely obliterated your machine, okay, with your documents on. Even though it never even got to the point where it had elevated privileges, in other words, being an administrator or a root account on Linux. So no, you are not safe just because you are running Linux. Okay. So all right, so our document, we have to resave it now. All right, so we can go and save it into documents, and we'll have exactly one file. So if we do that and we say file, save, and it defaults to documents, and we'll just give it a nice name called graph or chart or whatever, but all right, graph, and we save that document as, let's say for instance, Excel spreadsheet, and we save it. All right, and all right, so if we come and look at documents now, there's our one file we just saved, but all our other documents are gone. If you didn't have a backup, they are gone. All right. So yes, this is not the situation you want to find yourself in. Now, luckily for me, okay, this was just a demo, but lucky for me, I do have a backup, so I can come and get all my old documents and just move them back over into the correct folder, and everything is restored. But the thing is, you haven't actually got rid of the thing that infected you. Okay, so what that comes down to is, if you, for instance, have this Trojan still running in the background somewhere, it's waiting for you to copy all these files over again, and it goes and deletes them again. And you might even find your backup. Like in this case, it was on a different hard drive. It's based technically on the same machine. You could have deleted my backup. All right, and I've lost my backup as well, so I lost absolutely everything. So that's the importance of having backups, but somewhere where the virus can't get to them, and make backups often, okay? So that before you've actually gotten rid of the virus, that it's actually gone, and made sure that your stuff was safe. Then you get rid of the virus with some antivirus software, and all's good. All right, so there we are. So my documents are back, and I can continue working if I had gotten rid of the virus. The problem is, if you did not get rid of the virus, well, the stuff are going to be deleted again. Okay, and it could infect other machines and spread itself and delete everyone's documents. It can do far worse things as well. All right, DDoS attacks and so forth, which is very common. Using your machine to attack another machine. Using all your resources to completely use up the resources of this other machine that it's attacking. And I mean, it could have infected millions of computers around the world and done its naughty business. This is exactly how, for instance, a ransomware will work. It'll go and encrypt all your files. All right. And if you don't pay the person that wrote this program to infect you with, if you don't pay him in some way, normally via Bitcoin or something, he will never tell you what the password is that is necessary to decrypt all your files. All right, so they're gone. Again, if you don't have a backup, tough, they're gone. So what it really comes down to is, I mean, there are viruses, or let's call them malware, term used nowadays. Malware for almost any operating system, or all operating systems out there to some degree, are capable of being infected in some way. Some are more difficult to infect than others, some are far easier. Take for instance the three major operating systems. Windows has got by far the most viruses or malware. We're talking about millions. And then you've got the Apple OS X that's got far less, but it also has. And then according to who was it? It was Eset, one of their websites that I looked at. They reckoned they are in the vicinity of 250,000 malware items for Linux, and it is the least infected of these three main desktop operating systems. Okay, we're talking desktop now, but it'll also infect servers as well. I had, for instance, a Windows 2008 R2 server running a couple of years ago, and all it had on it was Internet Information Server, so that I got a single website that was up and running, and then I used Hmail, free application, to host a mail server. So I had, in other words, port 80 open, port 25, and port 110. That's all I had open on that machine. All right. And the one day I suddenly noticed I can't get to my website. And then I realized, I can't get to the machine itself. I had to get the service provider involved. It was a VPS. Get them involved. I could finally get onto my machine. And it was malware that somehow got onto this machine. I mean, I don't know how. I don't use it for anything. I don't sit on a log into it and browse or run anything. All it does is there to have my website, or was my website and email. That's it. And through some hole in Windows, it managed to get in. All right. I was lucky. I had a lot of source code on there as well as a backup. And luckily, doing its encryption and all sorts of stuff, it actually ran out of disk space. It used up all my disk space. And at that point, it stopped encrypting. And luckily, my source code was not encrypted. So my backup was fine. But that's just purely lucky. So some people don't have that luck, and they lose, literally, you can lose millions of dollars because of this. So what should you do? All right. I mean, even on your mobile devices, you can get viruses or malware, Android and so forth. There's a lot of companies that have antivirus packages that you can install. I mean, there's some very popular ones. For instance, I did a quick search here, and in the Windows world, I'm just looking here at this pink area here. What are the most according to these guys? Okay, what do they reckon are the best antiviruses for Windows? And they got BitDefender as #1. I've used BitDefender in the past. I had no problems with that. Norton, Kaspersky, I use that on one of my Windows machines at the moment. Train Micro and WebRoot. Now the ordering of these things really depends on which site you go to and how they tested it and so forth. But from my personal experience, I find BitDefender and Kaspersky for the paid-for antiviruses, they are of the best that you're going to get on Windows. They're not much better than the others, but they are better. And then you can also, you've got different interfaces. Some interfaces are just clunky and terrible. You want a nice interface. I had a problem, for instance, I used Avast, their free version at a stage on Windows, and their constant advertising themselves got just too much, so I got rid of that. That's when I moved over to Kaspersky, actually. But all right, so that's on the Windows side. I mean, BitDefender, Norton, Kaspersky, and so forth. I'm not so sure about Train Micro. I see a lot of companies that I've worked at in the past have used it, but a lot of viruses did get through, but that's just for interest sake. But there's a lot of these lists, and they're all reasonably good. All right. Then you can go, for instance, to the free antivirus ones. All right, for Windows, and you've got your BitDefender, Avira, Kaspersky, Avast, and so forth. Now, like I say, I used Avast, and it started really irritating me, and I moved over to Kaspersky for my free one. But like I say, I have used BitDefender, the paid for one, and I had no problems with that. And so far, Kaspersky is also just doing a great job. On the Linux side, for instance, this is where I was telling you where I was reading about I think it's here, about the 250,000 viruses. Sorry, it's if you go here, over here. All right, so they say Eset processes 250,000 malicious samples every day on average. Oh, so my mistake, not in total. So encyclopedia. Okay, so there's just a scant few thousand pieces of malicious software for Linux. So just a few thousand, whereas in Windows you have millions. All right, it doesn't mention here how much is there for OS X, etc. But for the Apple guys, but it'll be somewhere in between. I think it'll be lying more on the Linux side, so a little bit more secure than Windows. But yes, so we're running from like 7 million for Windows down to a few thousand for Linux. But thousands are still thousands, all right? But yes, you're not going to infect a Linux machine as easily as a Windows machine, but it can be done, and it has been done many times. Okay, so I guess that leaves the question then, how do you protect yourself? Well, on the Windows side of things, it's a little bit more difficult because of the fact that with Windows you can basically download anything off the internet and run it, and you really don't know, where that software comes from, who wrote it. Did someone hide a Trojan inside there, or they're going to do a DOS attack of some kind? You don't really know if you don't know the author. So it's got to be a trusted company. So let's say, for instance, like I just do a quick search on the internet here, for instance, for a movie player, and one of the things like VLC jumps up. Now VLC is trusted. Okay, so if you're a Windows guy and you want to install VLC, you're probably fine. Okay, make sure you get it from the actual VLC official websites and so forth, all your software. I mean, the same thing, for instance, let's say you want to download, like as a programmer, I want to download, for instance, Visual Studio Code. All right, so in Windows, so Visual Studio Code. Okay, it's going to detect I'm on Linux now, so it's going to recommend the Linux download. But if you go to the Visual Studio Code website, okay, this is my okay, that's not the one. That's Wikipedia. That's not what you want. where we here we go, Visual Studio Code. All right, so we're on the official Visual Studio website, okay, code website. This is a Microsoft website, okay. You know, you can come and you can look at the certificates and so forth, etc. Make sure that you are, you know, on the right website. So when you do choose your download, that you can be fairly sure that you're not getting some nasty piece of software from someone. But that's the whole thing with Windows. I mean, you can really download anything and run it on Windows. You know, there's so many Windows apps on the internet that everybody writes. Like there's a million video players out there. There are a million MP3 converters out there. There's so much software out there, and you don't know who you can trust and who you can't trust. That's why often, you know, if you don't have an antivirus and you try and run something, or let's say if you do have an antivirus and you try and run something, it warns you and says, hey, we found something in this file, you know, don't continue. So with Windows, try to stick to websites that are trustable, you know, big name websites. Don't just download any old thing. And make sure that you know, even if you stick it maybe in a virtual machine before the hand, run it, test it, see it, and decide. But so that is a good help as well to test stuff with. Just put it in a virtual machine. It doesn't matter if it's infected, then you can always reset your virtual machine, you know, roll it back to before it was infected. So with Microsoft, try and stay on trusted sites, well-known sites, you know, the well-brand named sites. Another thing, you know, that Linux, for instance, has had for multiple years is their store, okay, their software store where you can go and download stuff from. Microsoft has started that now as well. They've also got their store which you can download stuff from. That stuff is typically, I know on the Linux side that is the way, that is the trusted way to install software, and there's thousands of packages on there. The Windows Store, I'm not that sure yet. I haven't got that much information of infections from there. I haven't heard of any at the moment, but it's still a fairly small store. So hopefully they've got their eyes on what's happening there and making sure. So I would say, you know, trusted sites and the Microsoft Store. Get your stuff from there. Preferably the store first, I would say. With Linux, like I say, also, you know, you know, as a Linux guy, you know, you can sudo apt-get, you know, use pacman, whatever the case, and you can then make sure you're getting your latest version of the software, which, or not necessarily the latest, this is what I want to discuss now, but you're getting a probably non-infected piece of software if you go that route, sudo apt-get, etc. Alternatively, like here, I'm running Mint Cinnamon, okay, and you can go to the software manager, and this is like the Windows Store. Just Linux has had this for forever. All right, so taking a little moment here to open up. Okay, and open. All right, so so you got some categories here, and so you can download Wine, Stellarium. That's very nice. Here's Blender. Just for fun, let's see what the latest version of Blender is that they got here, 2.8.2. So they quite, you know, they're at the bleeding edge here. But this is the latest version of Linux Mint Cinnamon 20. So yeah, so that's sort of the latest version. If we want to, for instance, install Visual Studio Code, this is where you as a Linux guy must make a decision. You'll notice, okay, you've got two Visual Studio Codes here, the open source one and the non-open source one, but both of them are flatbacks, okay? And obviously the thing with the flatback is it includes all its dependencies in the flatback file. That's why these flatbacks can run on any version of Linux, well, most versions, distros. But the problem is they are huge to download. I mean, this one is 965 meg to download. All right. So what I typically do is, like this particular package, I trust Microsoft, but okay. So I assume there's going to be no viruses and so forth that got into Microsoft software. So firstly, this one I trust definitely. Okay, the Linux guys had put their eyes on it and made sure, and it's version 1.48. Okay, so what I then go and do with a piece of code which I trust, okay, I come and look and I see it's also on version 148. Okay, then I typically install this one, all right, either from the command line or through the software manager. Okay, but in some cases, like for instance KDE itself, I've actually taken the install directly off the internet. I did put my trust in the guys that wrote KDE. It is open source, and so you're fairly safe. But typically for Linux, try not to download anything off the internet. Okay, unless you have to. Stick with your normal packet managers and so forth. Even PPAs, don't necessarily add PPAs unless you can trust the company. All right, now I don't have an Apple box here, but I mean they've got their store, and you can go through that as well to make sure you're getting your good software from there. So yeah, don't try not to download things directly, and obviously, especially for the Windows guys, but it applies actually for Linux as well, and Apple. If you get something over email, all right, that is executable, okay, don't execute it, all right, unless you know what it is, you're 100% sure. Right, what I mean by that is, okay, a lot of email systems will not allow a file to be sent with the extension .exe, okay, which is a good thing, because that's how they spread viruses or malware. Okay, they would send you an exe with a fancy name on it. It's something enticing to you. Ooh, you want to run this? You double click on it, and you've just infected your machine. You might not even know it, and there it goes and infects your whole company, and you could get fired at the end of the day. So don't run things from your email stuff. All right, even if they send it to you in a zip file, and you decompress the zip file, inside there's an exe. Don't run it unless you know where it comes from. You got to trust the source. That's the big thing. Trust your source. Okay. With the Linux guys, it's easy. The distro, you can trust them. With Windows, you're going to download stuff off the internet. Make sure you only go for the known names. The known names. But that's about it, guys. So yeah, be careful. Don't just run any old piece of software. And I'll see you next time. See you, man. Goodbye.